Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and weekend. Here to bring the latest information that we have on multiple things in this morning's video. Of course, the first thing we will discuss is what's going on with this tropical wave that now has a high chance to become a depression or our next named storm. Our next named storm is the E name, Ernesto, and in my personal opinion, not only do I think this is going to become a tropical storm, I think this is going to become our next hurricane of the hurricane season, and even has a higher ceiling to potentially become a stronger hurricane. So what we'll do first is we'll discuss what's going on with this tropical wave right at this moment out here in the central Atlantic. We'll go over the latest information from the National Hurricane Center, and then we'll go over all the model guidance, the European, the GFS, ICON, etc., ensemble guidance, and then we'll speak on the environment out ahead of this storm system that does promote this to intensify at some point. And then we'll talk heavily on steering currents. That's a portion of the video where you guys as the audience can really absorb some knowledge on why these tropical systems get steered one way or the other. And we'll try to explain this in a way where you guys as the audience can understand. That's always huge to me. But this is the first time that we're going to be talking about steering currents with this storm system. We've done it with Beryl like crazy. We did it with Debbie, and now it's time to do it with what is likely going to be Ernesto sometime over the next 7 days. After we get done doing that, we will talk about what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Saturday. Utilize those timestamps, guys. They're there to help you guys out. I spent about 5 to 10 minutes after video to kind of drop them throughout the video. I understand not everybody has 30 to 45 minutes out their day to listen to some dude chatter about the weather. I totally get it. I take no offense to that, but definitely utilize those timestamps. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. Asking for prayers, I can get through this video because I've had to start it over about 30 times this morning just of not being able to get going. So let's get going here. So this is taking a look here at the Atlantic Basin. Our tropical wave is right here. It's very healthy, very large, very broad wave. Kind of reminds me of Debbie in the beginning life stages of Debbie, except Debbie was very void of any convection, shower, and storm activity in the very beginning. This system is not, and this has been dubbed an Invest 98L by the National Hurricane Center, which basically means it has the National Hurricane Center's attention, and it has my attention, that's for sure. But this is your classic looking tropical wave, an open wave out here. And if you notice with these colors, these oranges, these reds, these even blacks, even splotches of white, this tells us that there's some colder cloud tops with this, which means we have some stronger and taller updrafts, deep convection firing with this tropical wave. So this thing is definitely not struggling. It's just when is it going to develop some sort of defined low-level circulation? Once it does that, it'll become a tropical depression. Now, where is this going to go? We're going to discuss all this, but in general right now, this is heading, of course, east to west. It's just what's going to happen once it kind of gets into, this area right into here. Is this going to sneak off into the Caribbean? Is it going to kind of get on the northern section of the Greater Antilles? We're starting to think this is going to bring some impacts to the Leeward Islands. Let's just hope, for my folks tuning in from this area, let's really hope that this doesn't strengthen too much before getting to you folks. We need to watch the Turks and Caicos Islands out ahead of this system, the Bahamas, everybody. What is this going to do? Is it going to head on out to sea? A lot of model guides, I'll tell you right at the dot, has this heading out to sea, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's some ensemble members that has this getting very close and affecting the Bahamas, getting very close to the southeast, and you still got some members that are sneaking into the northern sections of the Caribbean. So this is what's going on with the system right now. Of course, whatever's left over at Debbie has been completely shredded apart. It has no tropical characteristics anymore, and it's on up here just kind of cruising out over Canada and areas of the North Atlantic. So we're not talking about Debbie anymore, but that is our tropical wave, very healthy. Now the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and let's see if we do have another update. We don't. So the latest update we have is pretty much a 2 a.m. update, 1:30 Eastern time. But this has an 80% chance to develop sometime over the next 7 days in this entire red area where you see the red X. That is where the tropical wave is located, which makes sense. You compare this with the actual satellite, and that's exactly where it is. So sometime over the next 7 days has an 80% chance to develop. And when I say develop, I mean develop into a depression or our next named storm. So, it could do it a little bit closer to the Caribbean islands. It could do it a little bit closer to the Turks and Caicos Islands. It could do it sometime, this weekend. It has the potential to do that. But this thing now, once it gets to red, from orange to red, National Hurricane Center considers that a high chance of developing. So this could get bumped up to a 90% chance, the 8 a.m. update. So if it does, I'll definitely try to put an update on the YouTube channel. But it doesn't change really anything on what I'm going to really, talk to you guys about throughout this entire video. So let's go over the latest model guidance. We'll start this off Monday morning, August the 12th. All right, I'm going to kind of skip a couple days, skip through the weekend, as I don't expect, and most people don't, even the folks at the National Hurricane Center, the expert, really don't expect this to develop into a named storm between now and throughout the weekend into early next week. So here it is, just this blob of, green right here. This is our tropical wave. This is the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands here, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, etc. So we continue to move this forward. We get into Tuesday morning. We got an L showing up on our map now. So this could be some sort of depression at this point, riding through the Lesser Antilles. I will really start to mention actual island names out here in the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands, etc. When we get a little bit closer, and we know how strong this is going to be and where the actual center of this is. I know y'all guys are thinking, well, Mitch, this is only a few days away. But trust me, the next few videos throughout the rest of the weekend, I will start to zoom into this area once we continue to get this model guidance that continues to sort of funnel in for us. So we continue to move this going here, and we're getting into Wednesday morning. 1,007 millibar low north of Puerto Rico. So this is starting to get a little bit stronger. Of course, if you don't know, the more you see this number drop, the millibar number, the stronger the storm system. And then we start to get into Thursday morning. Notice this abruptly turns north, and thankfully misses the Turks and Caicos Islands. Does not look like it's heading towards the Bahamas. It's just out here sort of in the southwest Atlantic. Thursday morning, August the 15th, is a 998 millibar tropical storm. I would say if we had to compare the millibar with strength, this would be a tropical storm. So it takes a while for it to really get going on the European model. And then at this point, it's kind of drifting north. 986 millibar low, I would say that's getting close to Category 1 hurricane status. About 6 days from now, if you don't know where Bermuda is, it's this little speck right here, very small. Of course, it's the southeast coastline. And this continues. We get into a Saturday morning. It's getting very close to Bermuda. 971 millibar hurricane. This is getting into that stronger hurricane, which I personally think this will at some point get to a week from today. So we're still talking about this. There's a chance between now and a week out from right now, me speaking, that this doesn't really impact or bring a whole lot of impacts to anybody. We're still tracking the heck out of this, trying to figure out where this is heading. So we keep this going, and it does bring some impacts to Bermuda, but does not really, bring a direct impact. It just hits Bermuda with some outer bands, which of course does bring impacts, but nothing devastating. Okay, we get into Sunday morning, which is 8 days from now. This looks like it almost tries to jog back west. We don't like to see that. But eventually, it kind of corrects itself and gets back north. And I will take a broader look at the eastern U.S. from my friends here in the Northeast and Atlantic Canada. But this is as far out as it goes. I can't go out any further from my friends here in Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada. But it does get somewhat close to New England. But at the end of the day, this pretty much is turning northeast. Now, we do need to watch Atlantic Canada, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, etc. You guys get some big storms when these things turn north like this. But, I only can go 10 days out on the Euro. This is as far out as it shows. So, what about the latest GFS? And guys, I'll be honest, I hadn't even looked at this yet. So, this is going to be new to me also. I've looked at the OOZ, but not the O6Z. So, here we go. The GFS wants to strengthen this. It wants to say, hey, by the time we get into Monday morning, this is a borderline tropical storm already. Here it is, right here, coming up on your screen. Strengthens this, unfortunately, and it's a little bit further south too, into a stronger tropical storm, and does move this into the Lesser Antilles, areas of the Leeward Islands, and begins to bring impacts to you guys. I would say this would, not be comparable to Beryl when it rolled through, which was a little bit further south. But of course, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So I don't want to rule out the possibility of a full-fledged hurricane rumbling through the Lesser Antilles. I really don't. I don't want to, I just don't want to rule that out, especially what we saw with Beryl. Now, the GFS is further south. Okay, we continue to move into Wednesday morning. The GFS latest one keeps this in the Caribbean. So this is new. And it actually moves it south of Puerto Rico as a Category 1, low-end Category 2 hurricane. And then it moves it north and actually makes a direct landfall as a hurricane next Wednesday evening, August the 14th, into the Dominican Republic. The southeast coastline of the Dominican Republic rides over, of course, weekends with the higher mountaintops over Hispaniola, gets back out north of Hispaniola, makes, unfortunately, a landfall on this run. And guys, you know, like I said, for you folks tuning in on like the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Bahamas, don't take each run as an exact conclusion. This is just model guidance. But the latest GFS does get this back over Hispaniola and then makes a landfall, brings up hurricane force conditions, brings an all-out hurricane right over these areas of the islands. And then it starts to move north, okay? And then it really gets stronger in the Southwest Atlantic, very warm waters. And then it looks like it's just kind of heading north-northeast, kind of gets into the same area like next Saturday evening as the Euro is. And then looks like it's a very strong hurricane, but it's starting to race off to the north-northeast, and it never impacts the southeast coastline. Of course, we'll do exactly what we did with the GFS, is what we did with the Euro, and we keep this going. Now, this is a very strong hurricane, well off the coast of the northeast. All it's doing is bringing big swells and large waves along the northeast coastline. But this does eventually, and I will show you guys, because I know I got a lot of people who tune in from Atlantic Canada. It does come up and make a landfall in Newfoundland. It's definitely a faster system than the Euro shows. It makes landfall in Newfoundland as a pretty strong tropical system. Of course, when they get this far north, they begin to lose some tropical characteristics because, you know, it gets into those cooler sea surface temperature waters. But it just does make landfalls like next, not this coming, like next Monday evening as a sub 990 millibar low. Very strong system. It's something we need to definitely watch for Atlantic Canada and the entire eastern U.S. Now, what about the latest icon? Remember, this is only going to go out 120 hours, but it's taking a path that's more so towards the Euro and has this as just a weak tropical storm and kind of north of Hispaniola next Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Now, if we take a look at the longer range icon from last night, same deal, takes this north and looks like it's heading on out to sea. In fact, it heads so abruptly out to sea that it actually gets south of Bermuda and looks like it's going to head east of Bermuda instead of west like the GFS and the European model. So what do you take from all that? Well, you would take from that, you know, you're immediately I'm going to get comments that's going to say, oh, fish storm. I'm even going to have some comments that say, you know, there's no point even talking about this. This is going out to sea. But guys, you guys also have to know, and I think you do know, that this stuff can change fast. So let's break down the EPS ensemble. So this makes up 51 members, and this is the one from last night. If you notice, between now and Wednesday morning of next week, 108 hours out, the members are really bunched up in this area. There's almost every single member develops some sort of tropical system. They're all bunched up in this area right over, it looks like it goes right over the Leeward Islands and you know, sneaks into, and a lot of these honestly have this making landfall in Puerto Rico. If I'm in Puerto Rico, I would watch this like a hawk because I would say that the mean goes right over Puerto Rico. So what happens after this? All right, so we actually go extend this a little bit further north. Now, what does these members do? Now, watch the spread. Watch how large of a spread. So we'll stop it right here. And this goes out to Friday morning. So next Friday morning, 6 days out. That is a pretty large spread, guys. You know, we got some members. Obviously, the average of the members is looking like it's turning like this. Okay? So, I mean, not going to pretend it doesn't show that. But I do want you guys to notice that you got a lot of members over here. Got a lot of members over here. Average right in here. But of course, we're all paying attention, right, to the members over here because you start to impact more landmass. So another thing I want you to notice here is how strong these members are. I think this is going to be a strong hurricane regardless if it hits land or not. But you have a lot of members that are threatening Bermuda. You got members that are sneaking a little bit too close for comfort across the Bahamas and the southeast, and you keep this going. And, sure enough, you have some very strong hurricanes getting awfully close. But, they're outlier members. You only got a few of them out of like 50-something, 51. Okay? And then, you extend this a little bit further north. Where are these members going? I do want you guys to notice something here in these members. It's going to be very hard to see, but you got a few members right when it gets right into here that sort of kind of go like this, right? And then they kind of jolt back like this. And that is because some of the long-range model guidance and some of these member runs shows another ridge building on top of this, which would push the tropical system maybe back towards and getting close back towards like the northeast coastline. But, this is something we got to watch. This kind of reminds me of Hurricane Lee last year. Remember, everybody was watching this thing. It was a massive hurricane out in the Atlantic. Ultimately, it did end up turning, but it brought a lot of impacts to Atlantic Canada. But we just need to watch this, guys, and we're going to continue to pump out the latest information. Now, if we're talking about what promotes this to really strengthen and to a very, I think it has potential to be a major hurricane, Category 3 or higher, well, it's these above average sea surface temperatures. So this is, of course, in Celsius. So, our tropical wave is probably going to move through this area right into here somewhere. So you got the waters that are 29, 28, even 30 degrees Celsius. So that's mid to upper 80s in Fahrenheit. It's very warm sea surface temperatures, and that's sea surface temperatures that does support the intensification of a tropical system. And then it's going to go from, somewhere in that circled area to maybe down here, very warm waters. Maybe up here, very warm waters out here. So if we're talking about pure intensification discussion, it has a lot to work with. I mean, the only thing that would cause it to weaken is land interaction with Cuba, the Dominican Republic, the Greater Antilles. But we got higher mountaintops and all these larger islands in the Caribbean. That would cause it to strengthen. But the unfortunate thing is that these islands are not very wide. They're long. But these tropical systems, the only thing that would help us here is if it just rode over every single Greater Antilles island. So we don't see that much. I mean, they're so, like I said, they're so small as far as width that, normally they'll sneak back over water. But most model guidance has this, being a southwest Atlantic scenario. I do want to mention the Gulf of Mexico is heating up, guys. We've been lucky so far. I mean, it is pretty early in hurricane season still. We've been lucky so far, but the more that the Gulf of Mexico continues to be unbothered by any kind of tropical activity, the warmer it gets. And, eventually we're going to get something that's going to sneak into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to be working with rocket fuel as far as bathtub water. So let's just hope that we can prolong this as long as possible and maybe avoid it altogether. The next thing we will discuss is the upper wind pattern, guys. And these are winds at 200 millibars, 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. This is going to be working with an excellent outflow, an excellent upper wind pattern. And guys, when I do use the word excellent and a great, wonderful, I'm not meaning it because I'm excited that this is going to explode into a Category 4 or 5 hurricane and hit somebody. I think I was reading some of the comments, and there were outlier comments, but, I read one that, in the way they were pretty much saying that I was excited that this was going to potentially, get very strong and impact the islands. That's not what I'm doing here. I guess I do need to reframe because I do understand that it can be offensive sometimes. But I will try to work on my wording. If it does offend anybody, you guys should know that that's not in my intentions. But I like to keep things at a personal level. So I like to hear you guys out. If you can kind of explain things that are certainly in a way where, it's not argumentative and rude. More importantly, some people don't know how to talk to somebody and without, showing it in a rude way. So I'm definitely here to hear you guys out always, for sure. Constructive criticism, if presented in a polite way, is always welcome. So I'm definitely not perfect, that's for sure. But back to the weather here. We keep this going here, and we get into, let's just go on and take this out to right here. So most model guidance does show this really intensifying once, and you see this L here, that is where future Ernesto will most likely be sometime mid to late next work week. So our tropical system is right into here. All right, based off the, this is the European. Yeah, this is the European model. And just a quick reminder, our tropical systems, you know, circulate, rotate cyclonically in the northern hemisphere. All low pressure does, right? So mid-low level circulation rotating like this around the actual low pressure. If you notice these lines with arrows embedded into them, these are streamlines. So this is basically the direction of the wind flow, 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. And if you notice, it's kind of pointing out this way, and then it kind of gets dispersed out that way, like that. And even down here, kind of getting pushed like this. So this is working with a favorable environment to promote strengthening. So basically what's happening here is air is actually getting, you know, pushed out away from the center of the circulation of the system in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This is allowing for more air to rise. That gets pushed out away. And if you continue to have that, then you can continue to promote an environment for rising air, which promotes an environment for sustaining and firing off continuous shower and storm development, which creates a very moist environment for these tropical systems. You aid that with the fact that you have really warm sea surface temperatures in this area, and you promote a strengthening and intensifying tropical system. So I think this will be dealing with a low shear environment. Now, not all, pretty much all tropical systems, you know, has to deal with some sort of shear, sometimes more than others. When it does get impacted by shear, that allows for dry air to get entrained into the circulation. In this case, when it's right here, this is why you watch this, watch as the millibar begins to drop. This really deals with a favorable environment where air getting pushed out away from the system. So, yeah, I mean, even right here, I mean, typically you start to get troughs right in here that really messes with these systems. But I mean, Bermuda right here, this system, I mean, dealing with a really good environment right here. We're just, you know, you see the slashes of blue here. This is where you're having higher winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And there's nothing really working like against this storm, like right up against it or anything like that, just getting dispersed outward. I mean, it's a pretty favorable environment, guys. So if you didn't understand that portion of the video, of course, there's going to be multiple opportunities to re-explain it. But just take my word for it. Once this system gets into this area right here, it's going to really have a chance to explode and really intensify. Now we're talking about steering currents next. Well, I'm sorry. One more thing to explain. I forgot I still had this up. One more thing to explain what the upper wind pattern does do for the environment of the system. So this is moist and dry air in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. You see the big blob of green here, that is our tropical wave. And then watch right into here as it enters a very good environment in the upper levels. When it does, it fully takes advantage of all the other ingredients, the warm sea surface temperatures and everything else. And this develops a very moist cocoon, a moist environment that develops a true core around the center of circulation. Once it does that, it's fully protected from any dry air. Now, one thing to notice here is it looks like some dry air tries to get involved right here. See this? Looks like a little shear impacts the system, but at this point, it just is able to re-intensify because it doesn't last long enough, and it's able to protect itself again. So, you know, this tropical system looks like it's completely wrapped in the outer edges of dry air. But if you look very close right in here, the actual center of this L is completely engulfed in that green, that very moist air. And that is because the favorable upper wind pattern that promotes constant rising of air. So, yeah. Moving past that, now let's explain this. So what you see on your screen, you see the orange, the red colors, that indicates higher pressure. The bluer colors indicates lower pressure. Flow works around both of these features in different ways. In the northern hemisphere, lower pressure, it works around it cyclonically, and then higher pressure anticyclonically. So I want you to notice here that there's a big blob of blue up into here, all right, over areas of the Northeast and areas of the North Atlantic. Flow around this is going just like this, right? And here is our blue blob down here. This is future Ernesto. You see kind of this Yeah, you got to squint your eyes, put on your bifocals here. That is what would be potential Ernesto down here, our lower pressure. And it's embedded in weak high pressure right down here. This weak high pressure is actually steering this system like this. Very, not slowly, but, at a pretty moderate pace, I would say. Okay, so this is kind of embedded in this ridge on top of it, and it's got some to the south of it, but the flow is supporting it moving. In general, more so, I would say west than north. So you kind of get this back off and you keep this going. Now watch what happens as that orange that's, around Ernesto begins to sort of, in a way, very slowly sort of drift away. And you see how this blue area isn't going away? It's still right there, sort of almost digging a little bit south. Well, right here is when the system begins to intensify. Right here on this particular run of the Euro, just north of the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. One thing to note also, a stronger system is always going to want to fight to go further north. The stronger low pressure always fights to go more poleward, gain more latitude. So already, even though there is a little bit of ridging still affecting the system, trying to force this further west, it's getting stronger at this point. So this is going to try to work north regardless. Mix that with the fact that this trough that digs down, you see this area in blue, weakens this ridge and creates a pretty substantial weakness in the steering currents right here. So this is next Thursday. So now this system, which was more so going like this, okay, is now starting to turn and go like this. And that is because we have a pretty substantial weakness right in here for this tropical storm to pretty much easily turn north. Mix that with the fact there's a weakness here and that the steering currents around this low pressure go just like this. Okay, so that's an easy avenue for this tropical system to not only go north, but try to just head on out to sea because it's going to follow the steering currents along this trough of low pressure, which is this blob of blue right here. So if you were to replace this area in blue with a ridge right in here, like say this area in orange was right here, then that would force this system to just continue to head off and threaten the southeast coastline. But it does not. So you keep this in motion and watch what happens. This is an easy avenue for this future tropical system to just continue to head north, which is this darker blob of blue right here. But what I want you to notice right here is that trough right here that's influencing this system, creating a weakness and steering it further north-northeast, begins to sort of weaken, and it's not really influencing this anymore. So instead of this like trough kind of continuously, if you look really closely, that little dot right there, that's Bermuda, this trough continuing to like pull this towards Bermuda, it then begins to kind of nudge back north again, because this trough is no longer influencing the steering of this much. It just has pretty much created a leftover weakness in the steering currents. So you keep this going. This kind of begins to kind of nudge back just straight west now. And I think also this nudges straight west because you see this little bit of light orange right here? Well, ridging goes around this flow goes around this ridge of high pressure like this. So this is actually feeling a little bit of pull from this light flow around this ridge to the north, and that's why this looks like it's heading that way, but it actually nudges back north a little bit. I know these arrows are everywhere. At the same time, you got another trough digging down right here where the flow's going just like this. So you want to watch how these flows will kind of work together. If this trough is a little bit stronger and this ridge influence is a little bit stronger, this would create an avenue to sort of get this closer to the eastern U.S. But you keep this going and watch what happens. You kind of have this situation where the storm system is so strong north of Bermuda in the northern Atlantic off the coast of the eastern U.S. that it's going to take one heck of a ridge to really nudge this, for it to really feel the flow around this ridge of high pressure to yank it back towards the northeast coastline. But this system is so strong at this point, it's a major hurricane right here, that this thing is heading north and there's not a whole lot you can do to stop it unless you build a substantial ridge on top of it. It is feeling somewhat of the pull of this trough here too. See, there's a flow going just like this around this trough. So this is kind of yanking on the system and actually preventing it from really just fully escaping on out to sea. I mean, that mixed with the fact that you do have a flow that's kind of going like this around this ridge. So to me, in a way, the steering currents don't really match up with where the system goes. I would think if something like this was in play, this would nudge a little bit closer to the northeast and to like Nova Scotia. But on this run of the Euro, it looks like it's just escaping on out somehow. But like I said, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because it's working against a ridge right here that would be really messing with its forward progress, that it's going like this. You got a ridge going just like that, and the flow doing that number. So it is kind of odd to me that this thing is just fully escaping, especially from a pull from this trough too. So that's just things we got to watch. Those are features we got to watch, and this is not a great example of a learning segment of this, because this is something that I learned with too. Why is this continually moving north? Well, it's probably in this case just because it has so much forward motion at this point, and it's a stronger system that not a whole lot is going to stop it at this point. So it's certainly things that we need to watch here, guys. It's always interesting watching how the steering currents work in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and we will continue to certainly learn as we go. I'm always learning. That's why I repeat the same information to you guys, because it helps me learn also. But as far as what's happening out there weather-wise today, we do have a lot of moisture scooting across areas of the southern plains, the south-central U.S. right here. We even have some flash flood warnings across the panhandle of Texas, areas of northeast New Mexico. We continue to have some storms across the eastern Carolinas, and the leftover kind of moisture is finally heading on out. We still got moisture up in New Brunswick, Nova Scotia from Debbie, but we are going to have some storms that do refire in the Carolinas today that might promote another flooding risk for you guys. Waking it up to some showers up here in the UP and Michigan, but as far as that's about all that's going on this morning. As far as watches, warnings, and advisories, we do have heat advisories for the Midlands of South Carolina down to the low country. We have heat advisories pretty much along the eastern sections of Florida down to the southern sections of Florida, the Panhandle. Coastal areas of Texas, flood watches continue to be up for eastern North Carolina. And the excessive rainfall outlook, the yellow areas where we have a slight risk. That means we have a 15% chance of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles of any given location. So we are going to have some nasty storms that could fire up today in the Carolinas. And I say nasty because I really think that they could produce a whole lot of rainfall, whoever gets hit by them. I know that yesterday here in the Carolinas, Debbie really left some nasty humidity, that's for sure. Boy, it was humid. Dew points were in the low 80s, just absolutely horrible humidity. And it'll be just like that today, too, in certain areas. Storm Prediction Center, we do have a marginal risk that does extend across the northern Rockies through the high plains. Level 1 out of 5, just due to some hail, maybe some gusty winds, not a big deal at all. And just the general risk of thunderstorms across the southeast. Speaking of the southeast, we are going to have a chance for some showers and storms across Florida today, the Panhandle of Florida. And I do want to watch these storms that get going here in areas of South Carolina and the eastern half of North Carolina, all the way up into southeast VA. These could drop a lot of rainfall. Precipitation values are very high. That means the atmosphere is going to squeeze out as much moisture as possible. The Piedmont of North Carolina, upstate of South Carolina, could get some storms later tonight also. And just to take a closer look at some of these showers and storms, I'm telling you, whoever gets hit by these, even my neck of the woods could here in Columbia, Fayetteville, over to eastern North Carolina, Richmond down to Norfolk, Virginia Beach area, all the way down to the low country. These could produce some very heavy rainfall today. So don't let this catch you by surprise at all. Very heavy rain as possible with this. But hopefully we can avoid the rainfall in the areas it's already seen, 10 to 15 inches of it. The Northeast today, not a whole lot to speak on, guys. I mean, Debbie's going to pull on out. We're done. Could get some showers. It could drift in overnight into western sections of New York. Outside of that, it's pretty quiet weather out there. Enjoy your weather. South central U.S. deal with a leftover rain this morning across Kansas and Oklahoma. This afternoon could get some rain going here in northeast Oklahoma. Could make it all the way into western Arkansas. And then we're going to watch numerous showers and storms drift throughout Colorado, northern New Mexico. Make it all the way into the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma by the time we get into later tonight. And we could be dealing with some showers and storms overnight in central Oklahoma, maybe all the way up to central Kansas, southern Nebraska. Certainly could wake up to a complex of storms moving throughout central and eastern Oklahoma tomorrow morning. So be aware of that. North central U.S., there's some showers drifting through the UP of Michigan, northern lower Michigan. The middle of the Midwest, it's pretty quiet. There ain't a whole lot to speak on. Some showers, maybe a strong severe storm or two could make its way through western Nebraska, out of Wyoming, in Wyoming also too. Wake up tomorrow morning to some showers drifting through areas of Nebraska, South Dakota. Not a very active weather day here at all. And then across the west, like I said, we have a marginal risk that extends all the way to Idaho and to Montana. So some storms are possible in areas of Idaho, western Montana, throughout the entire state of Wyoming, Utah, Colorado. Pop-up downpours possible, even as far west as like southern Nevada, certainly in Arizona, northern New Mexico. Some of these could dump a lot of heavy rain. Not everybody will get hit by them, but certainly some energy is just riding right through the Rockies today for sure. So temperatures not bad at all if you live up here in the Midwest, the interior sections of the Northeast, the Great Lakes region. Sort of an early preview of fall type day, but once you get to the deep south, 80s, 90s, high humidity. But there is a boundary where there's hardly no humidity and a lot of humidity, like in the mid-south as a cold front is working through. But us folks here in the deep, kind of in the southeast of the Alps, unfortunately, are not going to get in with this cold front. But if people enjoy it, that are getting it, that's for sure. Out west, temperatures are pretty warm, but nothing too crazy at all. Just typical kind of late summer type stuff. Nothing too wild at all. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful day. I'll probably have an update this evening. And talk to you soon.